Okay, let's talk briefly now about the relationship between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Now, by AD 70, Judaism was already mostly rabbinic and based in the synagogues instead of priestly and based in the temple. The temple, up until 70, still existed, and temple operations were going on, which are important to follow the law and to follow all of the prescriptions that are there in Leviticus and so forth and Deuteronomy. And so Judaism still had the temple and the priestly order. But in that year, Jerusalem and the temple suffered a complete destruction from the Romans. There had been an uprising, there had been a lot of persecution of Jews and Christians under Nero, and this had caused uprisings and so forth. And by AD 70, the Romans moved in and completely destroyed the temple as a way to put down the rebellion. But as I said, Judaism was already shifting towards being rabbinic. And what do I mean by that? Well, rabbis, Jewish teachers all around the Roman Empire in major Roman cities around the Mediterranean basin would teach the law and interpret the law and apply it and so forth and so on. And they had synagogues, and those synagogues were I hate to say church, they were not churches, but they were centers of Jewish culture and Jewish learning and learning the law and so forth and so on, learning the Torah. And so later on, Christian churches will base themselves somewhat on this synagogue idea. For example, in the New Testament, we see Paul going around places like Ephesus, and he preaches at some of the synagogues before he goes out into the city. So anyway, synagogues and rabbis were already very important. So when the destruction of the temple occurred, that made the rabbis even more important. And so this occurs, AD 70, right in the middle of the New Testament era. And so everyone had already begun to understand Christianity as a new religion that was distinct from Judaism for at least 2 decades before AD 70. In 49, for example, there was a major council in Jerusalem where the apostles decided key things about the conversion of Gentiles. And it became pretty obvious, at least at that point, if not before, that Christianity and Judaism were not the same thing. And so, yes, Christianity emerged out of the Jewish religion, and Christ saw himself as a fulfillment of the law. But it wasn't Judaism. It was going beyond it in a way. And so that's why the New Testament is called new. It's a new covenant. It's, if you will, a new deal. Now, Jews who rejected Christianity naturally rejected all the new and growing body of Christian writings that were emerging, such as the books of Paul and the Gospels and so forth and so on. And they rejected it as being somehow or another a completion of what we now call the Old Testament. So rabbinic Jews started looking more to a massive body of works known as the Mishnah and the Talmud as the full explanations of the Hebrew Bible. That Hebrew Bible to them isn't an old anything for Jews, okay? What made it old in the eyes of Christians was simply the coming of Christ and his new covenant expressed in the New Testament. So you can see why some people don't like the name Old Testament. Mostly Jews don't. And so, because for them, there's nothing to make it old.